Hi, everyone. My name is Angela, and I'm a compulsive eater. Thanks for waving. Oh, my goodness. It's so great to see you all here. Here we've got at least two continents, and it's just a miracle that we weigh and measure our food. And congratulations, Frankie, with 5 days. That's amazing. Wow, really amazing. I remember my early days, and I used to go to the market and just repeat the mantra over and over again. I weigh and measure 3 meals a day from the gray sheet. I don't eat in between, no matter what. My food is written down and committed to my sponsor, and abstinence is the most important thing in my life without exception. And I was terrified of supermarkets, so I would just repeat that over and over and over again. And and I stayed abstinent. My abstinence date is July 17th, 1993. It's quite a miracle how I found Gray Sheet. I had been suffering since, oh gosh, probably since I was, well, since I was born, really. But I started practicing bulimia when I was 14 years old, and I'm 59 now. So I have this July, I'll have 31 years of Gray Sheet back-to-back abstinence. Thank you. And prior to that, those 28 years before I found Gray Sheet, I never felt like I fit in. I never felt right in the world. I never felt like I was the same as everyone else. I felt that everyone else kind of got the memo, and somehow I missed the memo, and I didn't quite know how to live. I didn't know how to get along with people. And it seemed I was restless, irritable, and discontent. Nothing was ever good enough for me. I did well in school because that was the only place where there was structure. But recess and lunch, forget it. I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know how to open a conversation. I just felt like I wasn't good enough, and I felt unworthy. And before people even met me, I was positive that they didn't like me. So that was my life. To make things even more complicated, my mom married my stepfather, and he happened to be in the military. So we moved around a lot. So I was always the new kid in school. And I'm an only child. So I ended up having one best friend, and that was my cat. And his name was Puff. And anyway, one thing led to another. I had at one point joined ballet, and I decided that I wanted to become a professional dancer. And of course, in that arena, I learned to just eat one thing per day and journal it and congratulate myself for just having one thing in that day. And then I'd try and go as long as I could. This is dancing several hours every day in class and everything, and eating as little as possible. And then the day I quit ballet, it was like the floodgates opened, and all of a sudden this appetite just came out, and I was just voracious. I couldn't stop. I remember being at a barbecue at my mom's house. It's getting close to 4th of July here in America, and it might have been around that time in Canada too, July 1st maybe. And they had this bowl of stuff that we don't eat, and I ate the whole thing. And somebody next to me said, "I can't believe you ate the whole thing." And I was just embarrassed and ashamed. Anyway, I had this idea that if I got famous, everybody would love me finally, and I could hire a private cook, and I could hire private trainers, and I could be busy on set all day, and the food problem would just go away. And that was my plan. That was my plan. Just get famous, and this food thing will go away. Not grandiose at all. So I ended up in my second treatment center in Houston. And the day they let me out, I knew that I was going to go binge again. It was like the treatment centers for me didn't work. Although they were definitely, uh, a kind of a nice place to be. We had art therapy, drama therapy, you know, little walks around the facility. You know, it was very pleasant. Somebody made my bed for me every morning. It was nice. But I knew that I wasn't cured. The day I got out, I knew I was going to binge. But I also felt like, okay, well, on the map, I'm this close to LA, so let's go. So I jumped on a train and went to LA, and my plan was to get discovered in LA. I ended up living in a 1966 Volkswagen pop-top camper for about 7 months. It was during torrential rains that we were having in those years, 91, 92 in Los Angeles. And then the day my van broke down, they had an extra bed at the West Hollywood Homeless Organization. So here I am, homeless. And I thought to myself, what's a almost prima ballerina, almost famous person doing homeless? And the answer to that was food addiction. I was in that place because of food. The people around me that were in that place were coming off of crystal meth and all kinds of other drugs, mostly crystal meth. My drug was food. And food brought me to that place. So the homeless organization was a nice place to stay. I had a cot, like an army cot type thing, in a big room with many other cots. There weren't any cubicles or anything, nothing private about it. And then a little locker that was about 2 feet by 2 feet. And I had a big book in there that was stained with food stains. And so the problem with the West Hollywood Homeless Organization, though, even though it was nice, it had a walk-in refrigerator. And all the bougie restaurants and bakeries on La Brea would donate their stuff to our facility, because it's like, okay, at the end of the day, oh, well, there's a homeless place up the street, let's donate it there. So inside this walk-in refrigerator were humongous green garbage bags full of the stuff that we don't eat. And I would go in there, close the door, and in the dark, just eat. And then I'd throw up, and then I'd eat some more, and then I'd throw up again, and I'd eat some more. And there was just no end in sight. So one day, I walked into our little library, which was about the same size as the walk-in refrigerator. And I just asked God for help, because I knew I was going to go out and binge again. And I just reached down. It was kind of a dark room, and I picked up this book, and I opened it. It happened to be a New Testament. I'd never read anything like this before. I'm not getting religious on you guys. I'm just telling you my experience. I didn't know you could read any of these things. I thought they were maybe written in Latin or something. But I asked God for help, and I started furling the pages. And the pages opened to Matthew, a chapter called Matthew, verse 10, 29. And I started reading. My eyes fell on these words: "Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them falls to the ground apart from the will of the Father. Even the hairs on your head are numbered. So do not fear. You are more valuable than many sparrows." And at that moment, it's like the words in the book came alive, and something entered the room that was more profound and more powerful than anything I'd ever experienced before in my life or since. And I believe today that it was God. And he came into the room, maybe just with his little finger, but it was powerful. And I felt something in my heart move from one side to the other. I felt electricity through my body. And most of all, I felt a love wrapping around me. And I heard these words. They said, "You are worthy." I didn't feel worthy before that moment. And then they said, "You never have to do that again." So I walked out of that little library, and I don't know how long I was there, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 3 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. But I walked out of that little library and I never threw up again. So I was relieved of my bulimia. But I was still a compulsive eater. I did get out of the homeless organization and I ended up with roommates and I was eating all their food, couldn't stop eating. I mean, at least I wasn't throwing up. So I was going to OA at the time, and that was my abstinence, just don't throw up. And that was so that experience that I had was June of 1992. So another whole year went by until the day, and it was also in June. I was coming out of a HOW meeting in Los Angeles, and I saw this woman who looked familiar. She had striking red hair. I had seen her in other meetings that end in A. I had been to, Debtors Anonymous, and even Narcotics Anonymous. I really identified with those people. And I liked hearing the jail stories and the really hardcore stories because I identified. Anyway, I didn't see her in an NA meeting, but I saw her in some other meetings and she looked familiar, but I really didn't even know her name. And I sat down and started telling her about my problem. She was at a laundromat washing her clothes. She was going back to Cambridge the next day, and it turned out to be this wonderful GreySheeter who many of us know, who had at the time 11 years of GreySheet abstinence. And there were only 3 people in all of Los Angeles at that time doing GreySheet. And God put me with her at the laundromat. I was on my way to the bench, but I stopped and I told her my problem. And she said, well, I do GreySheet. And she says, I love my food. That was foreign to me. In all the other food meetings, I'd heard people say, I'm neutral around food. I don't really care about food. I'm trying not to care about food. But she was so happy that she loved her food. And that was foreign to me. And here she was in a thin body with clear eyes. And I wanted what she had. She would not allow me to start that day. She said, no, you have to go to a meeting. So that was a Thursday. That Saturday, I went to the Virginia Park Clubhouse, which was our only GreySheet meeting in Los Angeles at 11 a.m. And I met another bright-eyed, beautiful GreySheeter who many of us know, who had 7 years at the time, which I thought was an eternity to be abstinent. And she had the same thing, a thin body and clear eyes. And I definitely wanted what she had. So I got the instructions from her, how to weigh and measure, what to do. And I committed my lunch and I went to a 7-Eleven. Believe it or not, you can get abstinent food at a 7-Eleven. And I got my very first abstinent meal. To this day, I remember what it was. And I weighed and measured my very, very first lunch. And it's good to be abstinent for lunch. Even our founder of Alcoholics Anonymous got sober at lunch. So it's a good time. And I was hosting a party, or not hosting, a catering. I was a waiter and catering a party, a private party at someone's home. And I went to a little corner in the garden and I weighed and measured my lunch. And in that one meal, I lost 1,000 pounds. And it was 1,000 pounds of self-hatred, guilt, rationalization, calorie counting, trying to figure it out, anger at God, anger at myself, self-loathing, self-hatred, all that stuff just went away. And I felt 1,000 pounds lighter. And I had this little white button-down shirt with the black pants. And I was walking around that catering event and I thought I was a fashion model. I thought I was all that. I just felt on top of the world. And that was my experience of my very first GreySheet meal. And I was so thrilled that at the end of the party, when they were throwing out boatloads of food that hadn't been eaten yet, I didn't ask if I could take it home. I just let it go. That was a miracle for me. Miracle. So that was, like I said, June of 1993. I've been weighing and measuring ever since. I made a couple of technical errors, 5 more minutes, thank you. And, gray sheet in the beginning is not easy. Our steps, the 12 step says, or the 11th step says, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God. Well, I wasn't conscious about anything before coming to Gray Sheet. So I had to learn to be conscious, and having my scale and seeing those numbers and not be putting stuff in my mouth while I'm weighing and measuring. That was a discipline for me, something I had to learn, something I had to really work hard at, to be conscious around my food. Same thing with shopping, to shop consciously, to read the labels, to know what I'm putting in my basket, and just shop the outside aisles and all those tricks we learn in Gray Sheet. And what I learned when I came to Gray Sheet is that, because my whole life I thought I was a really bad person because I couldn't control myself around the food, and I thought there was something terribly wrong with me, not only with the food, but everything else. Like, why didn't people like me? Why was I, why was I so alone all the time? But what I found out with the food was that it was explained to me that I'm like a walking distillery. So sugars, grains, starches, and carbohydrates, anything that can be turned into alcohol, turns into alcohol in my body. So once I ingest those things, even a little, it's going to set up that phenomenon of craving, which is described in the doctor's opinion of the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Once the physical allergy is set up, now I have an uncontrollable craving, and I have to have more. And I have to eat the whole box. I have to eat the whole package. And then I have to go to the store and get more. And that is what that phenomenon of craving is. So when I abstain from sugars, grains, starches, and carbohydrates, anything that can be made into alcohol, I get to not have a craving. And I will say that I actually miraculously have not had a craving in almost 31 years since being on Gray Sheet. So I'm really grateful. I don't live in a van anymore. I live in a 3-bedroom house about a mile from the beach. I have a son and a daughter. In Gray Sheet abstinence, I met the man of my dreams. And then about 13 years later, I divorced the man of my dreams. That was also okay. And I have a good life today. I'm just going to end by saying, in the last 3 years, especially with what we've all been through with the lockdown and everything, I really got involved in Alcoholics Anonymous. I was told at the very beginning to go to AA meetings to supplement my program, which is what I did. I went to at least one Alcoholics Anonymous meeting every single week. But these last 4 years, I really joined Alcoholics Anonymous because I really, really know in the bottom of I've conceded to my innermost self that I am an alcoholic, and I am an alcoholic with food. And the community of Alcoholics Anonymous has been such a blessing to me. I am going to be in Ireland for the roundup, and I know so many of you in Gray Sheet, but I also know so many people in Alcoholics Anonymous. So even though I'm traveling alone, I will not be alone in Ireland. I'm going to be there for almost a month. And that's a far cry from how I lived most of my life. I was always alone. And today I have a huge, huge community around me of people that I love, and people who actually like being around me, and I love being around them. And we do stuff together, and it's a life beyond my wildest dreams. I never got famous, but I did. I never got discovered, but I am happy that I did discover Gray Sheet. Thank you all, and thank you, Paulina, for asking me to share today. And I love you, and I've known you forever. And no matter what, everybody.